Hey, what's up? Welcome back. You're watching the second episode in a series all about building out a short-term rental marketplace. In this episode, we're going to break ground, create a brand new Rails app, and start setting up some authentication. So let's dive into that. So I'm going to say Rails new clearbnb. We're going to skip tests because we're going to add RSpec later. And then I'm going to set the database to PostgreSQL. And I think that's it. Okay, I need to set my node environment to 14.7.1, and then I'm going to say Rails Webpacker install again because I did not have that version of Node. I had a super old version of Node and it kind of fails the Webpacker install. Say Rails db:create to create our database. So we can keep track of everything as we go. And then the next thing we want to do is open up our gem file. And we're going to add the gem Devise. This is going to be our authentication tool. Gem Devise. Okay, bundle install. Devise is a Ruby gem that is a super great tool for authentication. It's a flexible authentication solution for Rails built on Warden. So there's a bunch of different tools that we can use. We can do database authenticatable, omniauthable, meaning that we can log in with other accounts. I think we might actually want omniauthable at some point where we can omniauth into, for instance, like a Google account. I think that would be a really powerful tool. Confirmable, sending an email confirmation with instructions. I think that's important. Recoverable. So there's a lot of different tools here that we are going to want to probably use as part of our system. In a lot of demos, I don't add too many of these modules because oftentimes it's just a really simple demo. You can sort of just log in with username and password or email and password, and that's enough to kind of show off the demo. But for this, I think we really do want quite a bit of flexibility and functionality. And so let's take a look at the installation. Getting started. So let's see. Okay, so we've added the Devise gem. The next step is to do Rails G Devise :install. And we have another episode in this channel about setting up Devise, but this time we're going to go through in a little bit more depth. Okay, so then there's some steps that are spit out here at the top. So we want to open up environment, development, and go down to the mailer config and drop in this line. That's step one. All right, step two is ensure you have defined a root URL, something in config routes, route to home/index. Okay, so we actually don't have a home page yet. So I'm gonna create a static pages controller. And I'm gonna give it a home page. And this will be sort of the landing page for the site where we'll probably have a big input box that allows you to type in where you want to search for a vacation rental. So I've got this static pages tool allows you to kind of like build out almost like marketing pages, your privacy, your terms of service, things like that don't naturally fit in other places with Rails. So now we can open up our routes file here and we can say route to static pages home. Okay, what else we got? Step 3 was to ensure you have Flash messages in application HTML ERB. So we'll open that up. All right, here inside, we'll just drop it in at the top for now. We'll come back and style all of this later. And then the final step was to generate the Devise views, which is not necessarily required, but we're going to want control over the look and feel of this. So I'm going to say Rails G Devise views. Okay, great. And the next thing we need to do is, let's say, let's make a commit that says we've installed Devise. All right, the next thing is that we're going to need to actually have some sort of user model. So when we're configuring the model, we want to say, I think it's Rails G Devise user. Let's see, Rails G. Yeah, okay, so Rails G Devise and then the model name. So we don't actually have a model yet. So let's create a user model, Rails G model user. And Yeah, so this, for now, we're just gonna leave this empty. We're gonna create an empty model called user. We'll add all the Devise fields to it, and then we're gonna need to come back and add more to it later. I almost wonder too, if we wanna specify some sort of user type or something, where we could have either guest or host, but I think in practice, a user could be both, right? They could be taking actions as a guest and going out and traveling, or they could be also hosting their place. So maybe that doesn't actually matter for now. So we'll just create an empty model. Now we want to say rake or Rails DB migrate to migrate that. That'll actually create the table. And then we're going to say Rails G Devise user, and that should create the Devise, a migration that will add the Devise columns to the user. So we can take a look at this. And inside of the migration, you'll notice that there's a bunch of these modules that have commented out fields that are not actually supported right now. So we've got trackable. Let's actually look through all of these different fields and what they do. So we've got trackable. What is this? Track sign-in count, timestamps, and IP address. That does feel valuable, just so that when you're working through disputes between a guest and a host, sometimes it'll be valuable to know, like, okay, the person logged in and they saw something or they did something. So just having some sort of record of that seems good. We've got confirmable. So confirmable sends email with confirmation instructions, verifies whether the account is already confirmed during sign-in. That sounds valuable, right? We don't want people just trying to like keep signing up and spamming, different email addresses or something. Or we want to make sure that the person who's logged in has access to the email that they just signed up with. And then lockable locks an account after a specified number of failed sign-in attempts. So you can unlock via email or after a specified period. That seems valuable, so that we can make sure that if someone is, testing passwords, we can lock out the, someone who's just trying to, do brute force password testing. Okay. And let's see. T.timestamps null. So I think, when we created the user originally, we did have timestamps, so that's fine. All right. Then we've also got omniauthable, and there's several other sort of there are several other tools that are not, I don't think, are necessarily represented here. So let's we'll uncomment the confirmation and unlock token indexes, because those will help with the speed when you're going through the confirmation flow or the unlock flow. Yeah, so we're just going to go with these default fields. We've commented in all of them. We're going to say Rails DB migrate, and we'll take a look. Okay, so let's fire this up. Rails, actually, let's also look at the routes file, and there should have been, okay, so Devise for users. So I'm actually going to move this down a little bit and say Rails server. We'll probably want to keep that at the bottom long term, I think. So, okay. Just to keep it, that's one of the ways that I like to keep it organized, is sort of having your root at the very top, then a bunch of your resources, route definitions, and at the bottom any engines or other namespaces and things. Okay, so /user/sign up maybe. Okay, so this is going to be our sign up page. So if we wanted to enable omniauthable, Devise for, okay, so this is probably implemented inside of the user model. So we've got Devise, and here's all the different things that are enabled. What's interesting here is that in the documentation it says Devise for, but here it just says Devise. Are we looking at different things? Okay, not sure. All right, so all right, so but we do actually need to add these other, we want to add these other modules. So we can say confirmable, lockable, timeoutable, trackable, and omniauthable. Okay. If we're using Omniauth, we need to configure Omniauth inside of initializer's Devise, so that we can specify which providers we want to be able to log in with. This is really just Googling around. So we're going to look for something that has relatively recent commits. So this is 2 months ago, and it's on V1, and it's public. It's got 1.3K stars. That looks pretty decent. So here we can add this gem to our gem file. And we'll put this right under Devise. And here we can say this is authentication, just to keep this organized. Well, let's just bundle install this. All right, then we need to open up the initial config initializers directory, and in here there is devise.rb where it comes with a bunch of configuration that you're able to add. And so this follows sort of the same pattern as the production and in like the environment config, where we have devise setup do, and then it passes in config to the block here where we can set different arguments on this. And so what we want to set is we want to enable Google. So let's see. Okay, so this is the Omniauth section. So we're going to add a new Omniauth provider. And in this case, we're going to add Google, but I'm not sure exactly how we want to set this up or what the name of the provider is. Okay, here we go. So the provider is Google OAuth 2. And then we need to give it a client ID and a client secret. Client ID and client secret. And then we have scopes. Do we need any scopes? While developing your application, if you change the scope in the initializer, you'll need to restart your app server. Remember that either email or profile scope is required. So either we need the email or profile. Let's just say the email scope. That sounds like a little bit more limited. And then we need to find our app ID and app secret. So let's actually go to, okay, so we go to console.developers.google.com. So I'm going to create a brand new project called clearbnb. Clearbnb. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know what the capitalization is going to be yet. And so we will, yeah, this doesn't have any organization. We'll say create. Okay. And then we're going to switch to that project. Okay, so we're looking at the clearbnb project. We have to configure the OAuth consent screen. For now, we'll make it external. I think we're going to have to actually submit it if we want people to use this. Support email will be just email me at the beginning. We don't have an app logo. The domain, we don't have a homepage yet, but for now, I'll just say cjav.dev. And it'll be cjav.dev/privacy and /terms. And then when a domain is used in the consent screen, okay, so add that domain, sure. Wait, yeah. Okay, I guess, sure. Must be pre-registered here. If your app needs to go through verification, go to Google Search Console. Okay, the developer contact is me. And save and continue. I think that might work. All right, so add or remove scopes. We want the let's see. So see your primary Google email address or see your personal info, including any personal information you've made publicly available. I think we just want the email address for now. That's probably going to be just fine. And then we can say update. So this userinfo.email scope is interesting because I don't remember exactly if that's how we need to specify it or not. Okay, we're going to say save and continue. And we're going to add a test user. I'll add myself. And that's it for now. Save and continue. Back to the dashboard. Okay, so now that we have configured the OAuth consent screen, we should be able to create credentials for this. OAuth 2 client IDs. So we need to create some credentials. And we're going to use the OAuth client ID. The application type is going to be a web application. And This is going to be clearbnb. The authorized JavaScript origins. I don't think, yeah, I think we're going to need a redirect URI. So this is going to be localhost, it's actually just HTTP, localhost 3000 / something. All right, so we're going to use /user/auth Google OAuth 2 /callback. We'll see if this works as our callback URL. This is our actual client ID and client secret. So now what I want to do is say Rails credentials : edit. And I'm going to set my Google credentials here, and we'll say client ID is this, and client secret is this. We say OK. Client ID and client secret set up. So now we should be able to go back into our Devise initializer, and where it says app ID, we want to replace this with rails.application.credentials.google at client ID. And same thing here. So rails.application.credentials.google client secret. And that should give us the client ID and client secret from our secret credentials that are encrypted. And okay, so let's see if this works. And okay, so immediately you see that now we have this sign in with Google OAuth 2. We didn't actually change any of the UI, but because we have this provider configured, we should be able to click on this button. Could not authenticate you because of an authenticity error. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let's head over to the server. Attack prevented from Omniauth authenticity token protection. Let's see. Authentication failure, authenticity error forbidden. So let's, number one, let's make sure that our credentials all look good. And then from the dashboard here, I wonder if we're going to be able to see any errors. Doesn't look like we see any errors. So attack prevented from authenticity token. Okay, so let's see what this error is all about. Okay, the short answer is because your credentials are wrong. So you're calling the env on the first, but not the second argument. Better answer is use a better mousetrap. Okay, so here it looks like they've got the domain name as part of what's being passed. So we've got the strategy config Omniauth. Okay, so we've got the strategy, we've got the scope, we've got the access type and image. Okay, so there's a little bit more here than what we configured. All right, so what we've got going on right now is we are calling all right, so we've got the scope. We don't have the name. Maybe we should say name is Google, and maybe we want to say the access type is offline. And for the image aspect ratio, square. I'm not sure what that's about. But in our scope, we just have the email, and I think that's okay. So let's see. Oh, the one other thing was that this wasn't using, we're not passing the strategy class. So maybe we want to also do that, strategy class. So let's see if this helps. The page here, sign in with Google, could not authenticate Google because authenticity error. Yeah, authentication failure, authenticity error forbidden. So what's going on here? Let's check and make sure that our config is correct. So Rails, actually, I want to add pry-rails. So bundle add pry-rails so that I can change into the Devise config and the Devise settings. I guess I also want to put this I don't want to put it just directly at the bottom. I want to keep it in just development and test. So I can now say Rails console, and I should be able to look at those Devise settings. So cd Devise, and maybe can I look at config? Let's look at this again. So if can I look at Omniauth providers? We've got Google. Okay, Omniauth configs. I think that should be my credentials, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, those are my credentials. Okay, and then what else do we have going on here? Is that actually correct? Yeah, that's exactly what we've got. Okay, and then if this one is correct, that one looks good. Okay, so our client ID and our client secret are correct. We keep getting this authenticity error. This Stack Overflow post suggests that using Omniauth Rails CSRF protection is going to help. So let's take a look. So we just added this gem to our gem file. Now we need to bundle install, and we will refresh our sign in page. Click on sign in with Google. Hey, we are redirected, but or at least we're getting closer. So we have a redirect URI mismatch. So try to figure out, what we'd like to do is try to figure out why we are redirecting to something different. Okay. So the redirect URI that we specified was users auth Google callback, but in the dashboard we set a different callback URL. So I think we need to edit this. Yeah. So this instead of okay. Yeah. So this should be /users auth Google callback. It's because we set that name on the provider. Okay, so now let's head back over to our login page here. Okay, go to users/sign up, sign in with Google. Oh, look at that, we're redirected. Continue with clearbnb. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to click on my profile here. Could not authenticate you from Google because the action Google could not be found for the Devise Omniauth callbacks controller. Okay, great. So the next step is we need to actually go create this controller. So the Omniauth callbacks controller. So here what we want to do is open up, let's see, Rails G controller, and the one that it expected us to use was Devise/Omniauth callbacks controller, but in a lot of the instructions it says to override that, and when you're in your routes you specify the Omniauth callbacks pointing to your own callbacks controller that's nested under the users namespace. So we're going to call it users /Omniauth callbacks. Okay, so we're creating a brand new controller, and we're using this users/ so that the controller is namespaced. So if we open this thing up, you'll notice that at the top now we have users : so that is a namespaced controller there. We need to define the Google action, and in here this is where we're going to do the actual authentication. So we're going to try to find the user from Omniauth. If they're persisted, we're going to sign in. If not, we're going to try to sign them up, right? Okay, so here we've got the method that we would add to the user class. So we can go to the user model and add this new method from Omniauth. And this says where the provider is auth.provider and UID is auth.uid first or create. We're going to set their email address, password, their name and their image. And if we're using confirmable, you have to also validate the email address. And so we could skip the confirmation, the email address confirmation, because we know if they're logging in from Google, that is like definitely going to be their email because they're authenticated as the person already. Okay, so then what we want to do here is this code, right? So we're going to essentially copy the contents of this. And then we also want this method here, the failure method, in case that OAuth fails. All right, and so, okay, so we're looking up the user from Omniauth. This should find or create the user. And we have implemented it. If the user's persisted, sign them in and redirect. Sign in and redirect. Okay, and then we're going to set the flash message to they successfully logged in as Google. And then session devise Google data is going to be all of this except for the extra stuff. Okay, and then we're going to redirect to the new user registration flow. Okay, let's see if that helps us out. I know a lot of that was just boilerplate, so we'll see, because I don't think necessarily it's going to be perfect. All right, so we're going to start over. All right, sign in with Google. The action Google cannot be found for Devise Omniauth callbacks. Because we need to also update the. All right, so we also need to update the controller here, or I'm sorry, the route to use this. So that we're specifying when we're using the Omniauth callbacks controller, it's going here instead of to the Devise Omniauth callbacks. All right, so let's try it again. Sign in with Google. All right, hey, I think we are logged in. Okay, so how would we know if we actually created a user? So Rails C, and we will do user.count. And we have 0 users. So what happened here with this failure? So users.provider does not exist. Okay, so we didn't actually add the provider column or the UID column to the users table. So let's create a new migration, Rails G migration. We need to add Omniauth columns to user, and that's going to be the provider. And that's a string, and we're also going to pass the, it's like the auth ID or something like that, like provider. We called it something, we'll call it auth ID for now, but then we'll take a look and see what that is in the user table. So we're trying to look them up by their UID. So we've got the provider and the UID. So let's call it UID. So add Omniauth columns to so UID, and I think that's also going to be a string. Let's also make this add index to users on UID, add index to users on provider and UID, and make, I think that should be good. That'll make it so that this query where provider blah 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 is fast. Okay, if we've got those indexes, Rails DB migrate. Okay, let's try this again. /users/sign up. Sign in with Google. Okay, we're back to our page here. Still 0 users. What happened over here? Method name equals for user failed. Okay, so we don't have. Let's add name to the user. Rails G image. I think we can take off the image for now. Let's Rails DB migrate this thing. All right, here we go. Third time's a charm. Sign in with Google. All right. It looks like in our console here, we have a 500, and Why is this 500? Well, let's see. User.count. Hey, there's one user. User.last. All right, that is me. I've got my user ID. All my stuff is here. Okay, so that is now successfully creating users. So that's great. All right, so let's go through the flow again. So users/sign up. You're already signed in. Users/sign out. Is there a sign out method? Users log out. Destroy user session path. Users/sign out. Yeah, that should work. Oh, but we have to send a delete request to it. Okay, so we need to, have some button on the home page that allows us to sign out. So let's do that. So in the application HTML ERB template here, at the very top, we will have a button to log out. And this is going to go to the destroy user session path. And the method is going to be delete. Let's see if this works. Okay, log out, successfully signed out. And I guess we only need that if we're logged in. User signed in. Okay, so if they're signed in, they should see it. If they're not signed in, we shouldn't see it. All right, so the next step here is we want to go to users, sign up, and we'll enter in an email and password. Let's log in with password, sign up. A message with the confirmation link has been sent to your email address. Please follow that link to activate your account. And so in development, you can see this email attempting to send, right? It's being printed out in the logs. And so we can see this link here in the email message that was attempted to be sent out locally, but that's kind of a pain if you have to like always go into the logs to check it out, right? Or to like see it. And so our email was confirmed. We're not actually logged in yet, but what I wanted to do is, before we get too far, is I want to add to the gem file inside of development. And yeah, I'm going to add letter opener, because that will automatically open those emails that are being sent. They'll open them as HTML locally, so we can at least see them. Bundle install. Okay, so after we've installed the gem, we need to also go to environment development, and where we have the mailer, we want this to actually perform deliveries and send it to letter opener. Okay, so we're gonna copy, so we need to tell it that we want to set the delivery method to letter opener and we want it to perform deliveries. All right, so we're gonna head over to users sign up again. And here we're gonna say wave3@cjav.dev. Password, sign up. And all right, so now this is the email that you would have received. Welcome, you can confirm your account through this link below. We click confirm my account. Now it's confirmed. Now we can log in. So notice we're like users sign in here. So now we can actually log in. We're successfully signed in. We and yeah, we have a logout button here. So that's all looking pretty good. All right. So now we've got the ability to log in via Google or via database authentication. All right, so we had to update our user to support omniauthable. So we had to add the provider and the UID and name columns to the user class. We also went into our Devise initializer and used the config for the Google OAuth 2 provider here. So we set up our Google OAuth 2 provider. We also needed to set up a Omniauth callbacks controller where we received the completion of the Omniauth authentication flow. and we're able to find or create a user, and then we redirected them. We also, inside of the user model, we had to enable several of these Devise fields, and then we also implemented this from Omniauth static method that helped us find or create the customer by their authentication details. All right, so that's how we're gonna set up authentication. We'll probably add a little bit more to this later. Things like styling those Devise views is gonna be useful, but I think at this point, we can sort of go back to our list here and check off the box for authentication. Thanks so much for watching. In the next episode, we're gonna go through creating, reading, updating, and destroying listings as a host. Yeah, I hope this is useful for you. And yeah, now you can go and set up your own Google OmniAuth flow with Devise and Rails. Cool. See you in the next one.